Hello, I'm a woman on the internet. And it turns out that the internet and AI have some strange ideas about what that means. According to new research, there's this pervasive stereotype online that women are younger and men are older. It pops up everywhere, from age gaps between celebrities to search results for words like person or neighbour. It's in images, it's in text, it's in ChatGPT's training data, and these experiments show that it could be impacting the gender pay gap and your chances of getting hired. Welcome to the internet. You may have been here before, and you may have noticed that it doesn't always accurately represent reality. I've been reading a new study which reveals some striking biases in online data and in AIs like ChatGPT. Douglas Gilbo is the lead author of the paper, so I gave him an online call to find out more.
Increasingly, the internet is actually one of the main ways that we understand our social world. And so we started to become very interested in the ways in which the internet was not necessarily reflecting reality, but maybe providing a distorted picture of who we are in the social world.
Douglas and his team had previously looked into the distorted overrepresentation of men in online text and images. Now they wanted to add age into the mix. They collected a huge amount of data from all sorts of different sites. Let's start with IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, a website filled with photos of crew and performers in film and TV shows. The team cross-referenced 450,000 photos of celebrities with real information about those people.
We can get their actual age and their self-identified gender. And crucially, we could also see the timestamp of when the image was taken that's put on IMDb. So we actually know exactly how old they were in that image at that time.
The results? Female celebrities were on average 6.4 years younger in their photos than the male celebrities. The same kind of pattern popped up on a database of celebrity photographs from Google Images. Here's a graph showing the number of photos of women at different ages compared to men. The most common age for female celebs was 25, whereas for men, it was 44.
These are people who are influential. These are the idols. And so seeing this age distribution in such an impactful population of people is extra concerning from the point of view of the possible consequences of these stereotypes.
Now, you might have noticed that the entertainment industry isn't always a bastion of age and gender equality, but Douglas and his team weren't done yet.
We wanted to get the internet's depiction of regular folks too. And so we looked at a comprehensive set of what we call social categories, which includes occupations, so like banker, doctor, carpenter, baker, but also everyday social relationships like friend, colleague, and neighbor.
The team scraped Google image search results for different words and then hired people to estimate how old the faces in those images looked. And it turns out it's not just celebrities. Whether the search was for neighbour or scientist, writer or colleague, the women in the photos were constantly estimated to be younger than the men. In every case, the internet has a specific idea of what someone in a particular job should look like. Your job is being an assistant professor. Do you think if you Google assistant professor, do you think you look like what the internet thinks an assistant professor should look like?
In some ways, no. I can say, like, personally, when I go to the cafeteria here, they often ask me if I'm a student. Maybe that's my inability to grow a full beard.
You need a mustache.
I can grow a mustache. I don't know if the world wants that. So maybe I'm a bit of an outlier, but I will say, though, that there is a sort of stereotypical image of what a professor looks like. And of course, this can vary, but the sort of archetypal image is an old white guy, like with a corncob pipe and pads on his sleeves, right? But that's changed a lot. It does not at all reflect the actual distribution of professors today, but it was historically the case that it was older men, and there's still a legacy of that stereotype impacting our understanding of what it means to be a professor.
These old man stereotypes are still popping up all over search results and on websites like Wikipedia, Flickr and YouTube, which the team also looked at. But is this just a perception problem? You might be thinking, maybe women just look younger. As a woman, I certainly feel there's a bit of pressure to appear youthful. So the team decided to move past photos and dive into the text of the internet itself. And they were looking for patterns of word associations. What kind of jobs are associated with what kind of words?
The gender pronouns like he, she, him, her, which tells you whether a given category on average is being described as or is related to a man or a woman. And then with age, it was basically categories like young, old, child, adult.
Once again, the team were looking at social categories like jobs. Some jobs were often described with he's and hims and words like old or senior.
You have like chairman of the board, chief of staff, director of research.
Other jobs were linked to she, her pronouns and words associated with youth.
Cook, secretary, intern, even nurse. But importantly, our results actually are over thousands and thousands of these categories. And what we see is just a very strong correlation. The more a category is associated with women, the more it is associated with these younger ages.
The textual data that they used here is the same data that's previously been used to train large language models like ChatGPT.
The fact that it showed up in every single language model that we analyzed tells us that it's not about a particular data set. It's not, oh, it's just about Twitter or it's just about Reddit. It shows up everywhere once you have enough language data from the internet.
And a key thing about these stereotypes in image and text is that they're not true.
We then look at US Census data on occupations and industries, and what we find is actually, especially in the last decade or so, there is no real age gap between men and women. Not to mention, of course, if you look at just the raw census data on how long women and men live, women actually systematically live longer than men. So on average, they're older.
I'm going to beep out the data, but I want to know who is older out of us as n equals 1. We have a woman and a man on the internet.
Yes.
I was born in 19...
I was born in 19.
The stereotypes have been smashed.
That's right. That's right.
I am an old woman on the internet.
You wouldn't know it. You wouldn't
and
know
you're
it.
a young, youthful man. Just goes to show.
No, I know. These patterns they're pervasive.
And these pervasive patterns could be part of why there's a gender pay gap. Why research shows that women across a range of industries earn on average less than men. Because the jobs that showed a bigger age gap online also had a bigger gender pay gap in real life. And those stereotypes aren't just staying online. Douglas and the team did another experiment that showed that getting people to Google image search particular jobs influenced their beliefs about those jobs. They asked people to estimate the average age of workers in that profession. The ones who'd Googled it first thought that people in male-dominated jobs were, on average, older. Douglas calls it a self-fulfilling prophecy.
If the stereotypes are sort of what we think the world should be like, then we interact with the internet and we start to increasingly believe that our idea of what the world should look like is actually what the world looks like.
Which brings us on to artificial intelligence and those huge models which take the stereotypes that we publish online and feed them back to us. So let's talk about ChatGPT and one way that it's commonly used to sort through job applicants.
Actual organizations are using ChatGPT to, say, identify the top 10% resumes to then expedite their own review process. And then it's a question, which resumes actually get into that top 10 or 5%, right? And what we see is that ChatGPT actually gives the highest scores to older men.
Here are the results of Douglas and his co-authors' experiment with ChatGPT using fictional resumes. For older applicants, men have a clear advantage. But surprisingly, for younger applicants, women actually rank higher than men.
It also reflects a known pattern in systemic inequalities in labor markets and hiring, where increasingly there actually is a preference towards hiring younger women. However, in terms of research on what's called the glass ceiling, there's also the case that younger women are less likely to be promoted into higher status positions than younger men.
Age and gender are relatively simple things to look at. You can quantify them. But there's yet more factors associated with both of these that are harder to pin down. Who in society has wisdom, experience, authority, leadership skills? And like Douglas said, and like this research shows, these patterns are pervasive.
Even something seemingly simple like the gender and age of an occupation, we actually have a kind of mythology around this. And this is concerning because the AI revolution and these large language models rely on learning from all of this data that humans produce. And so what we're doing is creating a system where it's basically learning from our stereotypes and our mythologies about how the social world works. And so it really raises this question of how can we design tools and build culture in a way that actually helps us better calibrate our model of who we are, what society is, that can actually eliminate some of these statistical biases, not just for our own behaviors and beliefs, so that we can be agents of equality, but increasingly so that the AI systems that are gaining ever more power can actually also build an accurate model of the world and stop perpetuating and reinforcing these biases, and can maybe even help us embody the better angels of our nature.